Alright, hello everybody, welcome. This is round 2 of the MCEC, and we are on the Olympic Grand Prix. GT3 this week is the Patriots, and so GT1 is in the Huntley S, while GT2 is in the FQ2. Now, I was starting this race in 8th position, and that 8th position, basically what you're trying to do there is just not get into anything too major and just try to settle into the race and see what you can do. And so I'm able to decently do that so far. Nothing major. I was still holding my position, essentially. But yeah, so especially on a track like this where you've got some really tight and confined corners coming off the start, you just kind of want to make sure that you don't do anything too bad. So I was able to do that, so that's a nice start. I will take it. We have up here, we've got some separation between the first couple guys and then this backfield, and there was a little bit of an incident between what looks like Obst and C. Wilson, possibly lag related, but it basically allows me to get around the inside of Shady coming up here onto the bridge. And I will take that, considering I was trying to so desperately get past Shady on lap 1 of last week and was not able to get that done. But it was not to be for long. I had issues with that corner exit onto the highway and not only let Shady past, but Danny as well. And so actually I'm now back into last. Actually now only an 8th though. Unfortunately, we have not had the presence of Dirty each of the past 2 weeks. In week 1, he was reserved for by DJ Steve, and then unfortunately this race he was not able to have it reserved, so his position was left empty on the grid. He hadn't been able to be here the past 2 weeks due to work obligations, so Dirty, hopefully you're able to join us for the future Sunday races. Miss having you. Anyway, so coming up, last few corners of lap 1, it hit my front bumper there on the wide exit there going down. It kind of cost me just enough time that I might have been able to take advantage of that mistake by Danny, and I was able to get around him on that, but I wasn't then, and so now I've caught up to Danny though, and I'm trying to get around, and we're both kind of struggling a little bit here. I try and go around the outside, we make contact, not able to get it done. So he's still ahead, and then I'm a little bit late on the brakes in this corner, and I end up in his trunk. Thankfully it didn't do anything major to Danny, but it ultimately is just costing us, both of us, a little bit of time. However, we are still somewhat close to the pack at this point. Coming around toward the hairpin, still see everybody in view. Probably, a bunch of incidents going around, little minor things like that throughout the field, so nothing too much lost. And so, just especially after that little brake incident with Danny, I'm just trying to get myself settled into the race and get things going. Oh boy. Anyway, so a little mistake by Danny again, and that puts me in a little bit closer to him. And so coming up on this bumpy section again, coming around LSC, and So he manages to do what I did last lap and go a little bit wide there, and gives me a little bit of a chance to get a run on him, and I'm able to get the overtake there. And so you'll see me going for brake boosts here, and I'm actually getting them on this lap pretty decently. I actually tried out a different little experiment in practice for this, where instead of using L2 as my brake, I switched to L1 so that I could get immediate full 100% brake force to try and improve my chances of getting those brake boosts. And ultimately, I'm not sure how much it paid out, just because even, you know, the 40 laps or so that I tried with it, it just isn't as instinctual to me as, you know, the hundreds of hours I've put into using L2 as my brake. So you'll see a few times throughout here where I go to brake and hit L2 and start throwing a Molotov instead of actually braking. But so anyway, Shady Fruit here had a really nice strategy where he pitted on lap 5, which is the first lap where we are allowed to pit, and what it did was allow him to get overtaken by some of the fast GT1s quickly. That was the first lap where we ran into the GT1s, and it allowed him to avoid some of the traffic that we had to deal with. And you can see here he gets around relatively easily and gets out in front of me now that we're even on the pit situation. And so from here, you know, I'm just trying to put in some decent laps and see what happens. I'm still relatively early in my first pit. A lot of people haven't done one pit yet, so a few laps later, C. Wilson does his first pit, and I don't really know where he is. He's kind of all over the place. But yeah, so I'm gonna try and see what I can do, if I can make a little bit of push for C. Wilson, and I managed to do so to a decent extent. Here we go, later on in the lap, and I've put in actually a pretty decent lap here. I think it might have been my fastest lap. It could have been even faster, but yeah, so coming around, both trying to attack C. Wilson while dealing with GT1s coming up from behind. Both young Bright Hawk as well as Ryan are coming up here, and they end up, those are the GT1 leaders, they end up having a pretty nice battle throughout the race. And so here I'm coming around trying to get overtake C. Wilson here, and I'm focused on that and not on that corner prop there and issues. So this is the next lap then, and we get a similar result. So Brady's coming around, kind of drags me, and I lose some time again. And so at the end of this lap coming up, I'm seeing, you know, at this point I've been overtaken by a bunch of guys, and I've got a bunch of guys behind me. So I'm thinking, hey, it's probably a good time to pit again. However, I wasn't completely sure if I had that 15-minute window from last time. So I ultimately decided to stay out. And it was a mistake, because for the third lap in a row, I've got somebody on my inside, JJ this time, and sends me wide into the tree. Lose more time. And there you could hear the frustration. And then so coming up here later on in that lap, I'm going wide here because I was trying to make sure Axel had room to get around my teammate, and ultimately was not enough room, and so that went about as horribly as it could go. So now at the end of this lap, got Tyler behind me here, and we have a little bit of it coming together, and then I noticed Axel here somehow flipped. I don't know what happened there. But that didn't go well, and then so I'm at this point, I'm gonna take my second pit here. Definitely clear of the pitting window this time. So go ahead and opt to do that, and my thinking is go ahead and get 2 done and try to put in some laps and see if I can't overtake people, because at this point I think I was the first GT3 to get both their pits done. We're only at this point 13 laps into the race of 35 lap race, so
alright, done with pits. Let's see if we can make up time.
Yeah, so much later on in the race now, decently amount later, and you can see I finally am able to see Obst in the distance here. I was not really able to put in a ton of consistently good laps, and so here I think Obst has now made 2 pits, and I've obviously made 2 pits, and I made my normal breakpoint line, but I think Obst took it a little bit deep and I wasn't able to react to it, and so I catch Obst off there a little bit, and then he has a little mishap on that previous corner, and I managed to get a little bit of an overtake on him despite hitting that wall. So now I'm in front of Obst, and then I've got my GT1 teammate coming up from behind, Brinka, who put in a really nice race this race, so good job, Brinka. You're bringing home the points that both Axel and I have not, especially me, not done well, so good job. Anyway, so here, this is now coming down to the wire here, and I'm dealing with Sherritt trying to pass me, and we just had a really unfortunate incident there. And then not only that incident, but then Tyler's coming around behind, and he ends up wrecking out all those guys, and so our little incident there managed to turn into quite the kerfluffle. We've got, I think, hit what ends up being 4 GT2s all now bunched up within like 3 seconds of each other toward the end of this. Look at that. So this corner I screwed up and got Axel. I'm trying to just essentially leave room for them all to get around, and was not to be. I got the wall again. But anyway, so you can see here, so many, four GT2s within, 3 or so seconds. Yeah. So coming around at this point. So there's Obst. I'm decently ahead of Obst at this point, and not really within range of catching anybody in front of me. So at this point, I'm just trying to, hold on and just not do anything stupid, essentially. And so I'm pulling over here, making sure I let Brinka around. I don't want to do to Brinka what I did to Axel at any point. So yeah, and then I'll let you take a listen to this because this is gold.
Safely in front of Obst at this point. I don't think I'm going to gain. I say safely, but then I do that. Oh god. Here comes Obst. There comes Obst.
Yeah. So, brilliance on my part.
Come on, let's battle.
Just sheer brilliance. I let off the brakes way too early on that corner and take too much speed, and it sends me into the generators. So it probably cost me about 6-7 seconds, and now I've got Obst on my tail. And so now I've got a little bit of a closer finish than I wanted, but ultimately I was mostly able to hang with the guys in front of me after that second pit stop, but it just ultimately didn't have the pace and consistency to reel them back in the long run. So it was unlike the previous race where I did have the pace and was able to put in some nice battles and get in some interesting exchanges. This race was pretty boring. So not anything super useful going on here. So next week we'll have Granite, which is a track originally designed by Bag of Z on Xbox One, and it will be a rain race, and it's a good track. I enjoy the track. It's not too complex, so we'll see how this goes. But yeah, ultimately this just wasn't a good race for me. I've never really been all that good on Olympic Grand Prix and previously, and so I wasn't necessarily expecting all that much, and kind of got what I was expecting. So Brika ends up throwing down the third place podium finish in GT1, so congrats to him. And my sixth place finish in 2 races so far, so yay. Alright, well, that is it for the highlights, whatever you can make of the highlights, and thank you for watching. See you next week. Bye.